Now, when it comes to happiness and success in life, emotional intelligence matters a lot. It is one of the most important types of intelligence which all humans should have. Now, to make sense of this, I am joined by Abiola Salami, who is a performance coach, to discuss more about emotional intelligence. Good afternoon, Mr. Salami.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Good to have you here. Now, let's begin. What is emotional intelligence? Help us unbundle it.
Okay, so emotional intelligence is that ability of an individual to understand his or her emotions, based on the understanding, manage his or her emotions. Then on the other part, also understand the emotion of other people the person relates with at work or at home, and based on the understanding of the emotions of other people, build effective relationships with them.
Now, how does this outplay in workplaces, for instance?
Okay, so before now, there's been a lot of concentration on IQ, intelligence quotient. In fact, many people, when they are interviewed to get a job, the interviewer is always more interested in the level of IQ of the individual. Then you see someone who is brilliant, had a first class in school or even a 2-1 in school legitimately, and the person gets on the job, and after a while you realize that technically the person is sound, but when it comes to relating with people, when it comes to leading other people, when it comes to attending to customers, then the person is not effective, and such that it leads to poor performance on the job, then of course reduced productivity for the organization as well. That's on the job. In the home front, every now and then issues between a husband and wife, issues between even siblings or even parenting as well. What you find happening is because people don't have a critical skill of emotional intelligence, for example, called empathy. Empathy says seek first to understand before you are understood. And so when you don't understand your spouse and you just want your spouse to understand you by force, it leads to conflict. It leads to family breakdown. And so there are cases of divorce happening. And then the kind of children that will come out from that kind of home as well, they're not responsible people in the society.
Now, let's talk about emotional intelligence in the workplace. Research has also shown that, where people pay attention to the emotional intelligence of their employees, for instance, it has a direct bearing in terms of productivity. Yes. Now, in other places of work, how do we manage? What is the right thing to do for, employers and employees to pay attention to each other's emotional needs, so to speak?
Okay. Let me go back to empathy again. Let's put the case in point. A boss, for example, that's leading a team of 5 people to do a project, to execute a project. It is important for that boss not just to reel out instructions on what to be done. It's important for this boss to understand each member, each of those 5 people on the project, to know their abilities, to understand their emotions. And how do you understand people's emotions? One way is to pay attention to them, ask the right questions, care and show that you care. And based on this understanding, you give them the projects to be done, because many times you realize that the reason people resign from particular work they do, people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses, as it were. So when you're working with a difficult boss, somebody that is really, truly difficult, and you don't know how to manage that situation, the person leaves the place. Another case in point, an individual that doesn't know how to manage his emotion, and you're in customer service, for example, and the customer walks in, the customer talks to you anyhow, it doesn't matter what justification the customer thinks he has, or what justification you have as the customer service agent. You've not insulted this customer, you've not done anything wrong to the customer. But because you cannot manage your anger, and because the customer talks to you anyhow, then immediately you need to let the customer know that you're not the kind of child that comes from a place that you cannot give a response. And so you give a response to the customer that is not appropriate. That can cause the individual of his career. That can cause the brand that the individual represents as well. It gives a negative light on the brand as well. So we're saying that with emotional intelligence, we can relate well with people based on our understanding of people, and we can manage ourselves very well.
Now, you have made me understand that we've moved from IQ to emotional intelligence, empathy. Now, what are the tips to developing emotional intelligence? How do we even identify the need for it?
Okay, so the first competence required is self-awareness. Self-awareness is that I know myself. Many times when people are asked to talk about themselves, they either describe themselves with their nationality, their gender, the school they attended, their tribe, all of those things. But that's not really the core of who you are. The core of who you are is the person on the inside. The core of who you are you an angry person? How do you respond to people? Do you respond rudely? How do you handle situations where you need to show courage? There's something you've not done before. Are you the kind of person that will be afraid to try shy, and because you are afraid, you will not attempt. Those are the things that self-awareness talks about. Now, because you now know yourself, which is self-awareness, then you start to develop how to manage yourself. You know that once somebody talks to you in a particular way, you probably get angry. And once people even know you more than you know yourself, they will start to press what I call your mumu button. They know that something will get you angry because they know, think about it, when you know, secondary school or primary school, the reason some of us had nicknames that stuck is because the first time somebody called you that name, you flipped and you did not like it, and then you got angry, and they liked the way you were getting angry. So anytime they want to tease you, they use that against you. But the moment they call you whatever name it is, and you say, yeah, that is me, it immediately loses the power of that thing. And that is self-management, meaning that now that you know yourself, you know the traffic light, you know what I call your mumu button, you guard it with all sense of diligence. The fourth part of it is social awareness, which is knowing other people. How do you get to understand other people? Pay attention to them. But in a world that many people are selfish, many people only focus on themselves, and you cannot get the best out of people when you only focus on yourself. So ask people questions, observe them. There are things people may not say to you, but they are going through. Experts say that only 7% of communication is the words that we speak. That the other 93% has nothing to do with what we say. 38% of that is the tone of our voice. 55% of that is body language, the way we look. So we're paying attention to people, not just what is being said, but more importantly, how that thing is being said will help you to know people a little bit more. And finally, because of what you now know about people, you manage relationships effectively. There's one statement I read many years ago that will be a guidance for managing relationships effectively, which says that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Interesting. All right, final question would be, now, when we talk about emotional intelligence, it feels like it's more geared towards the employee. Now let's talk about the employers. How do we is there a need to pay attention even to the emotional needs of employers? You know, how does that also now relate to their interaction with employees?
Great question. That's a great question. Emotional intelligence is for every human being. Whether you are the employer or you are the employee, whether you are the husband or you are the wife, whether you are the parent or you are the child, every individual. There are times that employees would say that particular bosses are difficult. So, oh, my boss is so difficult. And
it's impossible. She's impossible.
Yeah, this person is just impossible. The person makes extreme demands, excessive demands. But what the employee is supposed to do is to use that same empathy. Seek first to understand before you are understood. Because this boss that you say is difficult may not necessarily be difficult, but because you don't understand what the boss is asking you. Is the boss saying that this project that you are working on that the boss has rejected for 3 times, is it saying that there is something you ought to fix that you've not fixed? Is it that you are working on that project out of the budget? Is it that you are working on that project beyond the time that is slated for the project? Is it that you are not carrying other stakeholders along that you're supposed to carry along in that project? Seeking first to understand the leader, the employer, what is that person asking for, will help the employee to cultivate the right emotional intelligence to properly manage the boss. I believe that there are no bad people, generally. There's a quote I read from Elisha Wilcox, who said that there are no good people and there are no bad people. I said, why? Because the good people are half bad and the bad people are half good. And that was revolutionary for me when I read that first. And it says to me that to relate effectively with people, seek first to understand them before you are understood.
Thank you so very much, Abiola Salami, for sharing your thoughts there.
Thank you.